Brian Noble, CNN. Good morning.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Bill, I'd wait forever for you. You know that.
Yeah, I know. That's awesome. Okay, so let's see. There's so much to talk about. Which do we choose first?
Well, I think that the big difference from even when we spoke a week ago to where we are now with this president is that now he's become an international president. Up until about a week ago, his agenda was really focused on domestic issues. There were some international things hanging out there, but he hadn't really been forced to confront them in the way that he has in the past week. And, we talked last Wednesday. It was just a few days later that he put the airstrike out on Syria. Now tensions in North Korea are increasing. He met with the president of China. All of a sudden, the role that the U.S. was playing in the world after he was inaugurated has changed big time. He's now has a different posture with Russia than he had before.
Yeah.
So it's almost in many ways, it's like his presidency's really begun now, because I think for presidents, the domestic issues are important, but the way that the president conducts him or herself on an international stage is really what often determines their legacy. And this is where Donald Trump is right now with some huge, huge international conflicts that he has to deal with so early on in his presidency.
And when you look to, so the Syria issue, it's very much in contrast, when you say he is an international president, very much in contrast to Trump, the candidate, who said, this is America first. I'm going to take care of America. We need to worry about this country. And I'm not sure, and I understand, chemical weapons being used, that is horrific. But this is an action basically standing up for those in the world who can't stand up for themselves.
Yeah, but what's interesting about it is that you're right, Bill. This is diametrically opposed to what he ran on during the campaign. It's diametrically opposed to what he advised President Obama via Twitter having to do with Syria during the campaign. He's multiple times told the president not to get involved in Syria and with any use of military force. And the other thing is that he seems to be compelled by what he saw on television, which is not uncommon with this president. He often makes big decisions based on an interview that he saw on TV or a report that he saw on Fox and Friends. And yes, those images were horrific.
Yeah.
And they obviously would compel anybody to do something drastic. But keep in mind, the Syrian regime is accused of using chemical attacks against its own people more than 100 different times. Mm-hmm. This red line has already been crossed. So the idea that all of a sudden now he felt the need to intervene, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it certainly changes the dynamics quite a bit, not only for how he's going to address Syria, but also how he addresses Russia. Because keep in mind, there were Russian troops on that airfield where the U.S. struck, and Putin and Assad remain close. And it's a much different perspective than what we had before in terms of everyone thinking that he was looking to forge some sort of more comfortable relationship with Russia. Things with Russia are as tense now as they've ever been.
And more out today on this investigation into Russia, showing more connections to Russia during the campaign. What's your take on? This whole Russia-Trump campaign issue is not going away. Syria, no Syria, it's not going away.
No, and maybe I was on Capitol Hill Friday and was with a group of reporters that talked to John McCain, and McCain, who's been very nervous to say the least about the connections that Trump may or may not have with Russia. He said that the action in Syria, to him, made him realize who the president was taking his advice from when it came to national security issues. And it wasn't the Russians. It was instead H.R. McMaster, his new national security advisor, and James Mattis, the defense secretary, and John Kelly, the Homeland Security secretary. These are people that McCain thinks are good, and he feels have now kind of taken over that role in the White House. But that still doesn't remove, all this smoke that's still billowing out from the campaign having to do with the connections between these two groups. And, CNN had reporting yesterday that we have several sources inside the House and Senate Intelligence Committees who have viewed this information. That Devin Nunes, the chair of the House Intel, who stepped away from the Russia investigation, that diametrically oppose and contradict what he claimed about the president's claims about wiretapping.
Yeah.
So as I said, I think we talked about this last week, until he allows this investigation to go forward unimpeded and we draw some sort of conclusion, it remains a cloud that hangs over his entire presidency, and it just makes it difficult for him to get anything done.
Interesting. Putin, who actually was saying good things about Donald Trump, now talks about the president, implying that he staged the whole attack and staged the chemical attack in Syria in order to be able to attack Syria. That's a different approach from Putin when it comes to Trump.
Yeah, but Putin was very had said a lot of complimentary things about Trump during the campaign. Up until about a week ago, he was supposed to meet with Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, in Moscow this week. Of course, Tillerson knows Putin from his time as the CEO of ExxonMobil. As soon as the attack in Syria happened, that meeting was pulled back. So, yeah, we're definitely seeing kind of a weakening of that relationship, which never really had happened, but there was kind of the opportunity for a relationship to occur there. But, Bill, I think it's important to kind of to lay out the groundwork in Syria and explain why it's so complicated there, because you have all these different interests, right? So you have the Assad regime, they're a brutal dictator. The reason that there's a problem there is because in the Arab Spring from a couple of years ago, a group of people rose up and wanted to kind of take back their government, and that created a civil war. And during that civil war is where you had some radical Islamic extremists that came in that were kind of taking root in these sections of Iraq that were not controlled, and that's where ISIS began. So and Assad and Putin have been friends forever, but Assad has this chip that he continues to play, that the reason that he needs to attack his own people is because he's trying to beat ISIS.
Right.
And when you have the United States is in such a difficult position here because you have the just two evils essentially that you're dealing with. Like if you help Assad, you're helping a brutal dictator rise up. But if you don't help Assad, then you're allowing ISIS to fester. And what's awful, and that's the pictures that we're seeing, is that there's millions of innocent people who are caught in the middle of this awful warfare.
You can call it a complicated situation. You can call it a mess. It is extremely, both of those. Finally, a couple things. I want you to comment on this statement that was made yesterday from Sean Spicer. It's not going to allow me to do it. But, of course, Spicer yesterday saying not even Hitler used chemical weapons. Oh, what a blunder. Comment on that.
Yeah, what we've seen from Sean Spicer over the past couple of weeks has just been hard to watch. I've known Sean Spicer for a long time. He's been, somebody that's been connected to the press for a long time. When I was a reporter in Virginia, he was the kind of press person that took the time to know even the reporters at the lowest levels. And so it's been difficult to watch this kind of spiral that he's had in this very difficult job. But I think even he recognized yesterday what an awful mistake that he made.
Yeah.
And, I think when you're the press secretary, you try and put things into context, you try and push things out to a certain point so people understand them. But, man, the second the word Hitler comes out of your mouth, you've got to realize that you made a mistake.
And he tried to dig out of it, and the more he was digging, the worse it was getting. It was just a disaster.
But to his credit, he went on the Situation Room with Wolf yesterday.
And he apologized.
And Wolf's never going to let anybody off the hook. And, Wolf, who escaped the Holocaust when he was a child before moving to Buffalo as a baby, he, really pressed Spicer on it. And honestly,
I didn't know that.
Aside from saying, I'm sorry, what else can you say?
Right.
So, but I think the thing for Spicer is you definitely have to think he's on some sort of clock right now. I mean, almost since his first briefing, there's been rumors that he was not long for the job. He's not someone, if you just kind of understand the context of the White House, he's not necessarily a Trump loyalist. He comes more from the right's previous wing of the party. So he's not somebody that's been with Trump from the very beginning. So he doesn't necessarily have Trump's implicit loyalty. Right. And Trump did not want him in that job. There were 2 or 3 people that they tried to get in that job first who said no. Kellyanne Conway, Laura Ingraham, somebody along those lines. And so, how much longer he's in this job, if there were a reason to get rid of him.
I think this week is the nail in the coffin. I just here he is, by the way, apologizing on CNN.
I was obviously trying to make a point about the heinous acts that Assad had made against his own people last week, using chemical weapons and gas. And frankly, I mistakenly used an inappropriate and insensitive reference to the Holocaust, for which, frankly, there is no there is no comparison. And for that, I apologize. It was a mistake to do that. And you know, I appreciate Director Panetta's comments. You know, anybody who not just suffered in the Holocaust or is a descendant of anybody, but frankly, you know, anyone who was offended by those comments. It's not, as I said, I'm not, you know, in any way standing by them. I was trying to draw a comparison for which there shouldn't have been.
All right, and he goes on with that on CNN yesterday, making that apology. Finally, Ryan, we're okay in pitching, right? The Mets, everything's going to be okay?
I was more nervous about the bats after the first couple of days, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like you got Matt Slip, who's hurt. You've got, you know, Wheeler's first outing looked pretty bad. But I tell you what, Matt Harvey's looked pretty good the first couple of days, and I did not expect that to happen. So I'm just hoping over the long term Lugo comes back. And, you know, I live in Washington, as you know, so I spend as much time making sure the Nationals are losing as I do the Mets.
Give them hell, Ryan.
Give
them hell.
Those damn Nationals. All right.
I got tickets to the Friday the 28th. They're going to be here in Washington, so hopefully they'll have a good night for it.
It'll be a big Mets night right there. All right, Ryan, great stuff. Ryan Noble, CNN, thank you so much.
All right.
We'll talk again next week.